Well, actually, I don't remember theoretically or from looking at other profiles and so on why I included this. Other than I think it's a pandemic. It's overworking is everywhere, and how to achieve proper life balance when you have a kind of need to be working all the time is really it's just constant issue in organizations or with leaders. We actually have a recording of a coaching session with somebody who was really high here, and the coach was pushing him on. So how much are you working? Well, well, what time do you get in? Well, probably 6 in the morning. And well, what time do you leave? Well, on a good day, I leave about 7. And do you do any work when you get home? Well, yeah. And it went on.
Except for when my son's with me on the weekend, every other weekend, then I try to work a little less.
Yeah, I work less when my son is with me on the weekend. And oh, by the way, my fiance, second marriage, doesn't mind that I work this much. It was really interesting, but as the coach worked him into it, the guy just said, I don't know who I am if I'm not working. And so at its core, this is an identity that's formed around I am my work. It often goes with perfect or ambition, because they're right either side of that. And I'm defined by my work. My value is how much and how well I get things done. And to the extent that that's really high, that need, I cannot not be working all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting, Bob. I feel the same way about driven as I do ambition. So they're really twins at some level for me, two peas in that same pod. And I look at obviously not having been with you when you created it. I'm putting myself in this, but the difference between drive and overly driven is significant. And that distinction between those two, we see the gift in driven is drive. And that is within parameters, within constraints. Overly driven is what you just described. And so I think about drive as the same way that I do ambition, which is, yeah, you know what? That's drive is an incredibly good characteristic. It's when it gets over driven, when it goes the other way, that it shifts and it works against us. And we see it, especially in the hierarchy, as leaders get farther and farther and farther up on role, that being driven, control, orientation, all of that is pretty rampant and rewarded in a significant way. When I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, clear back in my first internal job out of graduate school, there was a badge of honor that was known all over the company, all 3,000 of us. When did you sign out in the evening? And so when you signed out in the evening, I don't know, any time after 8 probably was when you started to get recognition. And there were several leaders inside the company that were rumored, known to actually look at the sign out sheets. And so it became a self reinforcing system to being overly driven. And we were all working 16 hours a day. It was just the norm. And so you look at what that means and then the way that impacts who you are and how you lead and the kind of leadership impact you're having on those that you're responsible to and for. It is often great results at high cost. And in many cases, the high cost is a canceling effect on the results. So it's really, really critical. Speaking of a friend of ours that's in open heart surgery this morning, has all kinds of ramifications over time.
I was thinking about my upbringing. My dad grew up on a dairy farm, and then they became entrepreneurs and built a large agribusiness. So um, there was actually a Christmas card that came out from my grandfather to the whole family. And on it was a kind of poem that he had written, and it's titled Work is a Blessing, which is true, but there was this ethic of work, 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 work in our family. So I don't know, 4 or 5, the work program at home started. We no longer lived on the farm. Um, and each year the amount of hours grew. And so by the time I was in the 7th, 8th grade in the summertime, I was working 6, 7, 8 hours a day in the summer. And of course, in the suburbs, this was unheard of. Nobody was doing this. And every night, every night, Dad came home to check the work. And I remember being in fear as a boy. Uh, if I was to clean a flower bed, hoe it up and edge it and so on. Oh man, I had to get enough done. That was like, how much did you get done today was one of the criteria. And the second was, is it perfect? Which is right next to driven. And I mean, even one weed left, like one little weed that's been hoed, but if it's left there and not cleaned out, you were going to hear about it. And so it's right next to perfect. When you got that perfectionistic need, it can drive a lot of I got to work and work and work until I get this just absolutely perfect. And so at its core, this is the need to uh, prove myself worthy by how much I accomplish, how much I do, and how hard I work and how long I stay. It's an identity. My worth, my value is in that exchange. And the gift right in the center of it, as Bill said, is drive, is the ability to, is willpower, is this energy or force of nature that a lot of leaders who have this are actually, and a very beautiful thing. And when it shifts into the creative, it becomes purposeful vision. It becomes, I'm no longer so focused on my own need to prove myself. That's dropped away. It's not that it's gone, but I'm managing it. It's dropped away. I've seen it. I'm starting to dismantle that structure over time, and something else is booting up, which is what matters most. We've talked about that, creating outcomes that matter. So what do I care about that's now pulling me forward rather than I'm pushing myself in order to prove myself? So it's a very different structure of how I use that gift in the creative orientation.
Yeah, I really appreciate the internal conversation that is going on for me as I was listening to you a few moments ago. And that's an old conversation. It's one that is still in me, even though not dominating the way that I choose to live every day. The conversation started with seventh and eighth grade. You 12, 13, 14, 7, 8 hours a day, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. The first thing that hit me in my conversation inside was, man, I wish I was on your schedule. Like, I'm seriously, I'm like, oh man, yeah, that ranch was a hard drive. And my dad used to say to us, if you think we work hard, you want to be a dairy farmer. And that's
Interesting.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The cows always have to be milked. It's not that ever goes away. He compared that to owning in a retail store that was 24 by 7. And
Yeah.
so, I think that drive, especially in uh, our culture, this North American Western culture, is still built into the system. Goes back in a tremendous way to what we often described as Puritan work ethic. That Puritan work ethic and the way that plays itself out, there was only drive. And if you are not driven, if you're not getting done what needed doing, in some cases, for your very survival, so that it takes that much to be actually able to provide, to do what's necessary to make that happen. And so it's built in a really deep way. And for those that end up with high drive, high driven, um, it was well earned over a long period of time and built and built and built, and then became detrimental when it went over the other way to both self and all those around in a way that the cost is so high. I mean, the cost is incredibly, incredibly high. And the creative orientation that you just went through on purposeful and visionary, the move is up and over, out of control into the creative. And that purposeful and visionary, at the very heart of it, changes why it is, what's behind why I work, what's my why in there. It's not out of fear. It's no longer driven by those things that are so detrimental. It actually is told by being very clear on what's most purposeful, what's mission, what's vision for me and for us. And it's compelling at that point. Then you have to watch it that you don't get so consumed that it goes over the other way. So that's always one that plays itself out with us all the time. Most importantly, here is the impact it has beyond self onto all those that are working with us and for us. Um, I had Kato-san in Tokyo, one of my clients, the CEO of Tupperware Japan, for heaven's sakes. So that will ring a bell for some of us, especially North America in the old days of Tupperware parties. He ran Tupperware Japan, had the manufacturing plants, unbelievably solid leader, driven, way driven. My second evening in the office in Tokyo, second evening, I walked into the office at 8:30 p.m. and the entire staff, literally, I don't think there was an exception in the room, had their heads down on their desks and were asleep. Their heads down on their desk and they were asleep. And I walked through that and over into Kato-san's office. I said, Kato-san, everybody's asleep. No one leaves before I leave. Okay. When do you leave? Uh, Soon. 10, 11, midnight. No one leaves before I leave. So driven for Katsusan and culturally, by the way, but driven for Katsusan, didn't matter whether or not you're doing anything. Didn't matter whether there was any need for you to be there. Uh, you need to show the signs of being driven. Having your head down in your desk sleep was not quite there, but better than not having them there. So he expected it out of his people. It was an expectation.
You'll often see this go with belonging. I have to belonging or pleasing. Uh,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so in that cultural
Yeah.
example, I belong to a larger cultural context and I have to
The
fit in,
we.
right? I have to play my part and so on. And and I want to move up with ambition or driven. I want to move up and therefore I need to belong to the club, to the right group. I want to belong this way. And when you get both of those going, you have this dual belief system that says, accept me, accept me, accept me. I need to belong. I need to be accepted. I need to be a part of. And I prove that my worth for that by work, 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 work. And that's a heart attack waiting to happen, really. It's kind of in the profile. It looks like a bow tie. It's extended in both directions.
Uh,
And it competes. It's a competing tension. I want you to like me, but I'm going to overwork you, or I'm going to. I want to, and then the amount of drive. So, in one leader I was working with, middle, this probably director level. This particular person was a woman, and she was always the first there, always the last to leave, and and she always said yes. And her self profile in the top half of the circle, all the creative dimensions, was very, very high, and others had rated her quite a bit lower across the board. This was a real shock to her. And she had confused working hard with really being effective. And she had confused that if I just say yes all the time and take it on, take it on, take it on, then I'm really contributing. But strategic, her lowest score in the top half was strategy. So it begins to undermine if I'm constantly taking it on. I don't have if I always say yes, I don't have a no. And strategy means I have to cut and say no to get really prioritized and focused on what's most important. Um, and so this is a kind of dual combination when you get both going at the same time. Sometimes it's led more by ambition driven perfect. And therefore, I want to be admired and looked up to. That's a different motive than it's when it's led by complying, which is I have to be accepted and therefore I'm working. So there's a nuance here. But in both cases, when those two things go together, you're getting a very high level of I have to work hard or else.
yeah. Yeah. I really related, Bob, was you were talking about that and the bow tie effect and what that looks like. Um, and what it made me, what I really flashed on was that you're looking at driven, and understanding that one of the things out of that is a belief system that my job as a leader is to drive you so that you are driven. And when you wire yourself up as that leader from a control orientation, you often find that leader in a position where the drive is pointed towards you and the rest of the organization. And we don't get the sustainable productivity out of the kind of driven that comes there. Doesn't happen. But there's another element of it, which is fascinating to me. And my example of that is an old client of mine, God rest his soul, Dick Bass, one of the Bass family from the oil folks in Texas, cornered the silver market. That whole family, cousins, second cousins, brothers, sisters, all driven, all driven. And Dick owned Vail and Snowbird Ski and Summer Resort. And Dick was driven, was incredibly driven. In fact, he was the first person to climb all seven summits of the highest peaks across the continents, all seven continents of the world. And his climbing instructor said that to him, his guide, woman from Alaska, that Dick was one of the few people that his drive, my shift in her language, actually got him to the top of Everest. And she said, nobody does that, Dick. Nobody does that. On top of all the hot air you have, it actually got you up there. Well, the way he turned that is Dick took great pride with just this little sense of humor that he would say, I don't have ulcers. I give ulcers. I'm a carrier. He actually played that out. So that organization was incredibly driven. And for Dick, the detrimental impact on him when he said, I don't get ulcers, died at 87, I don't get ulcers. He was serious about it. He was like, yeah, I am on that position where I actually give them. And that's part of why it is we get things done. He had it wired that part of the results that were created, significant reason for it was because of how he drove his people consistently and constantly over the top of what was reasonable by a significant amount. But Dick, come on, seriously? You're a carrier? You don't catch it? You're a carrier. Yeah, yeah. And that's a good thing. So that was the conversation. Oh yeah, it was very, very installed in him from a very, very early age. I think it was genetic, quite frankly, but wow, the impact on others and that frame of mind. And love Dick Bass, love, 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 amazing human being. He had that one really screwed up in his head, really screwed up.
When I was researching the profile, I went to the literature to find, well, what's the literature saying about high control? And of course, this is in the controlling dimension. And I was really shocked, actually. This was back in the late 90s. Despite the fact that we'd worked for decades on participative management and high involvement and self-managing work systems and all the whole systems design, there was very little written about the underpinnings of control, even though high control was kind of made to be the problem. And there was no also corresponding, like we found in our research, that high complying is actually much more highly correlated to ineffectiveness than is control. So you get one control, you get a lot of complying. And this dynamic was largely not discussed, even though we were talking about patriarchy and all that sort of stuff. So, but in the psych literature, you could get stuff on codependency and dependency and stuff like that. But the underpinnings of control was really like, I couldn't find it. The only book I could really find that was really powerful on it was Robert Kaplan's book, the senior researcher at Center for Creative Leadership, called Beyond Ambition. And he was talking about this overdrive. And in that, he coined a term called destructive productivity, which is you're pushing the organization beyond its limits, both emotional and even financial and economic and so on. You're overdriving. And oftentimes the crash happens after the person leaves. The person's promoted for the results they're getting. They've left behind a wasteland, and then the person leaves, gets promoted, and things come apart. So he called that destructive productivity, and the inverse of that is our sustainable productivity. On the top half under systems awareness, are you leading in a way that is self-renewing for yourself and for the organization? And when drive gets too high, the answer to that is often not the case in the way that you just described, Bill.
Well, I love that, right? So, automatically destructive productivity, then what comes to mind is constructive. What's constructive productivity look like? So there is a balance point in there. The gift of driven is the balance point, which is, oh, wow, yeah, you go over, it's a very fine line when it goes over into destructive from constructive. And wow, we do it. We do it all the time. And the lack of the consciousness of leaders to understand uh, when it toggles over into becoming actually working against us, taking that gift and hanging it on the reactive structure, the cost is so high, and we're chronically overworked. I mean, and then we brag about it and get all of that reinforcement for it. Um, and it shows up in everything. Shows up in impact on the family, detrimental. Shows up on health impact. I mean, it goes on and on and on. All those things you mentioned. Most importantly, for me, is that we think it's better results, and it isn't. It goes the other way.
Yeah, and
Goes the other way.
when I read the book Beyond Ambition, he kind of talked about like overextensions, like, and so you push your arm out too far, it's overextended. And then his prescription was kind of, you got to pull that back and just modulate it a bit. And that's true. Like, how do we toggle or not over toggle on it? And underneath that, however, is a compulsive relationship with overworking because I'm defined by it. So it's very difficult to modulate it until you get underneath it and get at the core identity construction, which says I have to be this way or else, which is a false construction. It got me so far. I packed my gift in it and strength, but it now, especially in complex roles, it's just you can't scale it. And so it's
Doesn't scale.
doesn't scale at all. So I have to go deeper to what's the core belief that I made when I was young, that got me through,
Yeah.
that now no longer serves me. Then you can start to have choice about how you modulate or don't modulate given the circumstances, and then you're in a creative relationship with that gift.
The only way that driven and controllers actually can, the delusion here of scale their own results is as we said so many times, more, harder, faster. You have to double down and triple down, and the doubling down is I'm going to work more, I'm going to do it harder, I'm going to be faster at it. And all of us can see the limitation of that. You get it in a visual every time you even talk about it. And then the detrimental impact on the other side, more, harder, faster. And the move that Bob's talking about on up into achieve results is so brilliant in the design because it actually has a tailing off effect on results. So when we talk about better
Yeah.
results, less energetic costs, the better results, less energetic costs never comes down in the control orientation. You might get better results. The energetic costs continue to go up. And at some point, the leveling effect is results and cost even out, and cost goes above results. And so it is absolutely can be plotted. It's math, and it happens over and over and over again in our businesses and in our organization. And all you have to do is walk in and spend a few hours in the culture late in the afternoon and see what happens between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. Watch it. If it's not an evening shift, yeah, okay, there it is. Start showing up, and first day in the culture, you see it.
It was a shock to me and really insightful, actually. We did we'll talk about it some other time, but when I first realized that high control, which is all about results, getting results, that's the core of it. I am my results, is actually inverse to results. The correlations are
That's a butt
inverse.
kicker, Bob.
The higher the score on controlling, the lower the score goes on achieves results and achieving altogether. So it's counterproductive and high energetic costs um, in more complex roles. The other thing I wanted to mention
Well,
here,
Bob, before you go on there, this is a note, Sarah. There have been multiple times in our partnership in this incredibly beautiful long relationship that Bob gets me on statistics. And I go, yeah, that was no question about it. Inverse relationship. I am my results,
you know,
no question about it. The harder I drive, the less results I get. Oh boy.
it may not be the case so much in earlier roles, when I'm coming up the
Yeah,
chain.
yeah.
But as complex as they expand, you got more scope and scale. Complexity gets higher, spans of control, all that stuff increases. You go, oh, this no longer works for me. And then it becomes inverse.
Yeah.
And
Finish what you're saying, Bob. I interrupted you.
well, it hangs on. If you look at our highest performing organization data, you'll see, they're like the highest top 10% of high performing businesses. And what's the leadership profile look like in those businesses? You'll see a very high creative profile, but you'll also see an extension at perfect driven and ambition. So this does serve. But then when you see our data on integral leaders that have moved beyond the um, self-authoring stage in our stage of development research, and you get into the self-transforming stages of leadership where there are very few, but in our sample we had an upwardly biased sample so that we could see what goes on at that stage. Um, that drops away. And it's just the top half because it's the same gifts but deployed on a creative structure. So this tendency to overwork, and define myself by results, since it does get results to a degree, it holds on until very late, actually, in our development. And then you're holding on to it longer than you need it because you've developed the same strengths at the creative, like purpose, vision, strategy,
Yes.
that kind of drive. And so I'll often have conversations with leaders who have a strong upper half profile, good on relating, good on achieving, so on.
Yeah.
And then this wedge down here at controlling, and I'll say, well, let's talk about that. And invariably it comes down to, I don't need that anymore. It's
Yes.
such a habit. I fall back into it, but I actually doesn't serve me anymore. And it's kind of a vestige organ, if you will, of my past. And it's not needed anymore. I can let it go.
You're right on the so having done hundreds of profiles of most senior leaders and CEOs, always get that experience, that profile, and got one right in mind. I won't, mention his name because he's current CEO of a large multinational, and Bob, we know who we're talking about here. High drive, high ambition, as I call them kickers. When I see that in a very creative profile, and I watch those kickers come out, those kickers often for these leaders are drive and ambition, and sometimes together. And that conversation is, you've actually outgrown this, and you're still holding on to it. It no longer serves you. You even know it doesn't serve you anymore. Is that true? Is that accurate? Yeah, it doesn't. But I still hold on to it. And the stories are all there. They're all there. Yeah, I've had this since I was a kid.
Had it since I was a child. Growing up on the farm, you name it, whatever that might be, the steel fabrication plant, all of those things. I mean, those stories are there and they're old. And that story in me went clear back to 7 or 8 years old. And my father, we'd pull up to a gate. The ranch was a lot of acreage. You could drive all over that place. There was all kinds of fences that you'd had to go up and open the gate, move it. It was a barbed wire fence. You'd move the gate. You'd have the post, all of that, swing it open. Dad would drive through the gate. You'd close it behind you, that whole thing. My father, would say to me when I was a little slow on opening the door to jump out to open the gate. If I was a little bit slow, but it didn't matter. I was always a little slow. And the first thing he said, do you have any ambition at all? Okay. Yeah. Then I would get out. And if I walked from the pickup truck door to the gate, I would hear come out of there, hey, get some energy and get moving. Get a little step in there. In fact, you ought to run. So the deal was out of the truck the minute before it stopped, before he put it in park. You're still a little on a roll. You're out of the door and you're running to the gate and you're opening the gate. He drives through. You shut the gate and you're running to the truck. And he'd watch you in the mirror, in the rear view mirror, and then he'd comment on it. And my brother and I used to merciful, how do you say it? Mercifully? How do you say it? Merciless.
Mercilessly.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. We teased my dad because it's the only way to survive. We made fun of him all the time. It's like behind his back. And we were the two on the ranch, right? That we were the boys. Everybody else was working for us. They all love my dad, except for when you're in that position, you love your dad and he kicks your ass. And we just were merciless on teasing my dad behind his back. It was our way of actually surviving. I mean, it was ingrained. But guess what? Did the same thing to my boys. Head up to Deer Hollow. Come on, guys. Seriously? We're going to be here all freaking day. Let's get moving. So there it is.
I'm laughing because my dad has different language, but the same constant push.
Yeah, I have no doubt that those two knew each other and have met since.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the beautiful thing is, look at what you've done and created with your life. And the same here. So, yes, there was
what a gift.
all of that deep patterning, but wow, what a gift I was given. And so the process of development is how do you keep the gift and jettison all those liabilities that came along with it. And so it's just and invariably when I'm working with someone who has a strong scores here, I'm going to listen to their story and I'm going to ultimately go, wow.
Yeah, me too.
Wow, look at what
beautiful story in most cases.
Look at all this. Wow, amazing. And so a beautiful thing to take this gift of will and power and creative drive and shape it. And when we're young, we can't not shape it if we organize that way around this defines me. This is who I am. This makes me a good boy, a good person, a good man. This is what success looks like. So let's get on with it. And it serves us until it stops, or it starts to have more and more energetic costs. And then we have the opportunity to update the software, update the coding around it, keep the gift, medicine, the liabilities.
Update on that iOS. I flashed on, and I think we're really close on this one. I flashed on all the work that I did in youth and group youth leadership, and I can still remember on our high adventures, 17-mile hikes, going back in and all that, and still the conversations amongst the adult leaders, those of us doing this, man, check out that ambition. I mean, I mean, in the most positive terms, wow, does he have drive? Where did he get that at 13? Oh, no, that's incredible. You can always expect, fill in the blank. I can think of it right now. Dub is going to be at the head of everything. And he's going to be the first one, by the way, that not only makes it to the top of the mountain, he's then going to go back and help everybody else with their packs. And he's going to be carrying their packs up the hill on his second run, his third run, his fourth run. And so when it actually works for us and for those around us, until it toggles over to the other side and works against us, and for those that work with us and for us. And it is that balance point. It is an incredible gift, incredible gift. The high drive, that high ambition in moderation, they always show up. They're aware, they're there, they're going to get the job done. They're going to make sure that the job get done. They never have to be asked. It goes on and on and on and on because they've already been told. They've learned it over and over and over again. So by the time they start interacting socially with others in that kind of setting, never have to be asked. Never have to be asked. And then the conversation turns with the adults and the parents in the room. Boy, was she raised right. Really had good parents. So watch all of those dynamics and the way they play. In our family, in our faith, moderation in all things was a constant mantra. Constant mantra. That was not true in drive. It was not true in ambition. There is no moderation there. We may have said it, but we didn't believe it.
It's interesting that we're talking about this because I was researching this morning, and I think this gets to the even beyond creative, to the integral informed by unity level of this. And I was researching the first principle and foundation of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And part of this is my own reflection as I go into this open heart surgery next week or week after next. And he says, listen to the relationship to will and power. He says, take, Lord, receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, my entire will.
Mm.
All I have and call my own, you have given all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace. That's enough for me. And so there is an evolution of this great gift of will that actually becomes surrender. And to where my will and thy will align. They're not separate and anymore. And then but I have to come through this whole curriculum of reactive to creative to integral to, because I have to learn how to use and develop the capacity to create. And then I turn it over. At latest stage, I become moved by something larger than myself that wants to use this capacity for its own higher purposes. And that's the more integral, informed by unity relationship with this same beautiful gift.
We ended up, so appreciate that as a great place to end this part of the conversation. We ended up in a number of those conversations last week at the Academy, Unity Academy.
Yes.
It takes place in two ways, and there's distinction, but they're both important. Surrender of one's will and submission.
Yeah.
And when in our tradition, faith tradition, as Christians, within most of the wisdom traditions and the faith traditions, there's something almost directly on all of this. Thy will be done. is surrendering one's will. It's in submission. And the last thing we have to give of higher purpose is our will. It doesn't mean a loss of free agency. It doesn't mean loss of free agency.
Yeah.
We're still independent actors. We still have free agency, all based on choice. Choice to surrender one's will is the ultimate when we're making the move from creative to integral informed by unity. And for those of us that are hard-willed, my dad had another word for that, but I won't say that now. Surrendering of one's will takes a lifetime in many cases. And it's part of that development. Thy will be done.